To those of you who are watching this via Zoom or on YouTube Live, we will get this started here in just a few seconds after a few more coming in. We've got people showing up in both channels, so just give us a few more seconds. Some of this presentation ahead of time. It's great. And I want to give Scott as much time as I can to share it with you all. So let's go ahead and get going. I'll just remind our audience one final time that you can submit your questions for Scott anytime using the QA tab below, and we will get to those in a few. Scott, take it away.
Hi, everybody. As my screen says, I'm Scott Taylor, and I've been working in NVIDIA on the product line that involves the Tegra CPU and SoC chips, which are used for this particular chip I'm working on is Orin, which is a chip designed for the autonomous vehicle career verification engineer. I've been working in the field for pushing 30 years now, and this presentation is part of an work that I've been doing. I've been doing a lot of different code review in a lot of different directions in the last 10 years. We've been a big change from doing just CPU and gaming with the development of lots of GPU technologies and lots of GPU technologies used now for artificial intelligence, neural networks, machine learning. We've now become a company that is involved with far more than just gaming systems, ranging from gaming to virtual environments for training artificial intelligence networks, climate analysis, medical visualization, natural language, autonomous vehicles, which we'll talk a lot more about during this presentation. Metropolises for city planning. So there's a whole lot of things that we're doing. And of course, as we have more and more areas in which we're branching into, we have a lot more people who are using the products and a lot more developers. So we're up to, as of the GTC announcements that have been going on for our internal conference this week, we're now up to 2.5 million developers in the field. And of course, as you have more and more people using your products, the amount of documentation and the amount of scrutiny on your design quality and code has increased. So of course, more and more of our effort has to be spent in providing quality products and quality documentation. So if we dig a little deeper into the high performance technical computing market, there's a lot of things going on. There's these between GPUs and our Tegra CPUs, we have molecular dynamics, we have climate work, we have all sorts of calculations that are being done. And one of the largest spaces that we're starting to increase in is the autonomous vehicle market. So in the autonomous vehicle market, we're involved with not just the machine learning portion of it, but we also have the Tegra chips, which act as a single chip solution for integrating all of the sensors and doing all of the calculations. And then involvement with mapping services and everything that's needed to make the entire solution work so that we can these are some of the different partners we have in the automotive field, means the fastest that they can. So the whole culture is built around being able to that we do. So let's get into the business challenges of these markets, and this will start tying into how we're using Collaborator. I showed on the first set of slides, most of those require teams to be doing actively code reviews and document reviews. Documentation is what makes the world go round. The the interesting thing here is the autonomous vehicle market crosses a lot of these different segments. It uses GPUs, it uses entire software stacks, it uses CPU chips, and so all of those things start falling under a particularly stringent set of requirements for reviewing in order to meet those needs. So I'm going to concentrate most of this talk on the use within the CPU hardware and software space, which feeds the autonomous vehicle market, because that's really where we've stressed Collaborator the most. And so we've been using Collaborator for a little over 10 years now. I think the first review was kind of mid 2010. We've done, there's a comma that's in the wrong place there, 151,000 different reviews that have been done. I grabbed some snapshots of what was in progress right at the very end of 2020, and then another snapshot of where we were just a couple of weeks ago with the number of things. So you can see there's quite a few different phases that we've got things in. There's a continuous motion of reviews through the system as we're going along. One interesting thing is that we have kind of a bimodal behavior of our reviewers per review. When it comes to things like code reviews, it's usually a fairly small number of people, and you can see that the cluster in the right hand side, it sort of peaks at around most everything is in the 2 to 6 range. However, the scale of this doesn't really show just how many reviews have a large number. You see there's a tail there. The tail actually runs all the way out to 88 for our largest review in the last couple of years. But there's a tremendous number in the dozens of people category. And that tends to be the documents that need to be reviewed for the automotive industry, and you'll see why there's so many people that need to be involved. But that long tail is actually a sizable number of people, which makes the mean actually higher than what it would appear to be from the peak there. So on to autonomous vehicles. Anything we're doing in the autonomous vehicle market has to be qualified under something called the ISO 26262 standard. This is a standard very specific to the automotive industry, and it is a safety related standard. It leverages your standard quality measurement standards. So any of your ISO 9001 and whatnot are all assumed as a basis for building the safety standard on top of. So being a functional safety standard, its real focus is on reducing the possible risks due to a design failure or any kind of unintended behavior. So unintended behavior could be due to a problem in the specification. It could be due to a bug in the implementation, just a standard bug. It could be random events like alpha particle hits causing the chip to behave unpredictably. You also have to cover under the standard any kind of foreseeable operation errors or misuse. So this is covering users doing incorrect things, incorrect implementation of software stacks on top of hardware, or even protection against any type of attack surfaces that a hacker might be able to take advantage of. So these are all sort of factoring into that functional safety. ISO 26262 also pertains to software tools that are used to design the chips. So for instance, it's kind of ironic, but it means that we have to actually evaluate Collaborator itself as part of the standard in order to meet the ISO standards. So the review tool itself actually has to be reviewed as part of the standard. So there's a lot of stringent requirements for this.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that, I love that we're talking about speed and quality here, but also this, this initiative of really, compliance at scale, where Collaborator is certainly used by NVIDIA and a number of other organizations to maintain that. Because when you're in an industry where, people's lives, their health and their safety are, at risk, that's incredibly important. Whether it's the healthcare industry or automotive, aerospace, there are so many industries where it's not just a business goal. You're actually creating software that plays a direct role in the health and safety of the people who are using it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the these standards are part of making sure that occurs. But it also has to be part of the culture of the company producing them as well. So there's it has to work both ways. So, as I said, the goal is to reduce this risk to an acceptable, near zero level. Nothing is ever completely perfect. But you do this through a combination of various kinds of safety systems that protect against either systemic or random faults and failures. It has to involve systematic processes, your design processes. Have you created a way in which you design the chip that minimizes the chances that a bug would be there? And how do you prove that you've done these things? So that's the tracking and auditing. The standard refers to basically anything that's used as a part of the product or is consumed by a customer as a safety work product. This could be design, it could be software, it could be documentation. All of these things are products that have to meet the standard. So the evidence, and evidence is a big word in the standard overall. You have to have evidence of adhering to all of these processes and to be able to audit this. And you have to be able to archive this and prove it for multiple generations, multiple decades, because cars will be on the road for 10, 20 years. And if any time in the lifetime of that car, if there's a problem, we have to be able to go back and prove this is what we did to mitigate that problem. This is who approved it. This is the design process that was used as part of the standard. So as you can see, when you have that kind of requirement, you need a tool that's going to be able to handle all of those requirements. And Collaborators is the one that we've been using. I'll talk more about that as we go along. So what kind of, one of the common questions, well, what kind of documents and things are you talking about here? So it could be internal design documentation. That could be architectural specs. It could be micro architectural specs. It could be customer facing documentation, technical reference manuals. It could be these things I refer to safety work product requirements themselves. These are the documents that show this is the set of failures that could occur in the chip. These are the protection mechanisms that make sure that those will be detected within the minimum amount of time that's required, et cetera. And then of course, the code itself, whether that's the RTL code, the verification test bench code, firmware, high level software, even the operating system has to be reviewed. So all of that stuff factors into what needs to have these very rigorous reviews for making sure that all of this stuff is being adhered to and auditable. And this is lots of different document formats too. It could be PDF files, it could be C code, it could be Microsoft Office documents, it could be just random text documents that are part of your design. So we have to cover all of that. So, when we started getting into this market and realized that we were going to have these requirements around, the ISO standards, we said, well, okay, what are our strengths? What do we have going for us right now? Where do we need to go to make sure that we're going to be able to handle all of this? So we already have our well-established teams. We have our processes, we have our standards, all the quality document control and everything is already in place. We already have a culture internally of code reviews as part of the normal turn-in process and document reviews for all of our documents. The real question was, are our internal needs and these external needs aligned? And where do we need to go to make sure that these two are synergistic and not that we have different standards for internal versus external. So there was a lot of cultural change that has resulted from learning how to meet all of these ISO 26262 standards. So it's clear that as these products are going on, the number of documents increases each year, the type of documentation changes, the complexity is going up as the design complexity increases. And I'll say almost most of these documents have to meet these standards. So same sort of set of documents shown on the right, but then there's this overarching requirement that they have to meet certain standards. On the other hand, you've got code reviews, which you may have informal code reviews like, hey, I want to make this change. I need some of my peers to look at it. And those tend to be something that you want to be more of an ad hoc kind of category. So you'll see there's going to be some friction coming as we go along between the multiple usage models. So in order to invent this entire flow, we wanted to focus on really the three key things of usability of the tools, scalability, and then obviously compliance. So I'll work through these backwards. So with compliance, the challenges are, as I said earlier, we have literally decades of time in which we have to maintain all of this and prove it. So we had to start off with sort of what was the process itself and define a review methodology. And then as we execute it, that sort of translates to what was actually done on each of these reviews or in the design that led up to the review. Then you have to have proof of a certain consistency in the review execution itself. So was the process, what is the process, and was the process actually followed? Then I've mentioned this before, we have to provide evidence and audit logs and things of who did what and when, timestamps. This person reviewed it. These are the people that have the appropriate roles. So you have to have clear identification of who is responsible for approvals at any given time. And then perhaps most importantly, as you've seen in the news over the past years, you have to make sure that these results can never be tampered with after the fact. You have to be able to go back and actually prove that this was or was not done at a particular point in time. And so everything that we have to do in this space must be immutable. And this is a key enabler, but also a key restriction. Like you can't change comments in a review if you're trying to adhere to the standard. You can't delete comments during the review because they were made at some point in time, and that audit trail has to be complete and absolute. So these are interesting challenges for a review tool where you're balancing the rigors of auditability with the ease of use. So that leads to a scalability problem, of course. We have lots of documents. Those documents can be hundreds of pages long. We may, in a given review, upload dozens of versions of them as we're reviewing. And we may have multiple milestones where we have to do that. So, your 1.0 milestone versus some earlier intermediate milestone. You may have reviews at each of those levels. And then multiply that by the number of reviewers that you've got for each of those documents, and then the number of comments that they have to make per document. And then you also can't ignore the fact that you have inter-document dependencies. So as one document changes, you also have to make sure that all the other documents that reference it or that are making assumptions on what that document says also have to be cross-checked. So there's a tremendous amount of complexity in making all of this work. So when you look at that, one of the primary concerns we had early in the game was performance. We have a certain amount of server capacity. And when you multiply out all of those uses, that starts to eat up server capacity. When you have thousands of users using this at any given time, that can result in slow response. And so that early on was a problem. And one of we'll talk about it a little bit later. there was a lot of engagement between NVIDIA and SmartBear on making sure that this whole system was going to scale at the level that we were for the complexities of these chips. So in the beginning, when people were first starting to use Collaborator 10 years ago, there were very few groups using it. There were lots of different tools available. Collaborator was just one of many. The internal support was fairly informal and minimal. IT would make sure that there was a server procured and that they'd restart it if it ever crashed, and there wasn't a whole lot more going on early days. So it was a very Wild West kind of behavior. It was just one of many tools. And with the limited support and usage model, it took a couple of years for things to start taking off before it sort of accelerated under its own gravity. So as fast forward to the last few years, where we've made significant strides in standardizing on this as one of our main tools. Now we have many different groups, and all of them come with their own personal use models based off of the types of products and types of documents that they're needing to review. We've gone from an informal support to internally having full-time support for it, as well as greatly increasing the partnership with SmartBear, regular meetings, technical exchanges, and that. So it's not just we log a bug and wait for something to be fixed. There's a lot of active back and forth, as we've said, hey, in order to support the ISO standard, these are some new features that we need, and these are the reasons why. And so there's been a tremendous back and forth going on, very healthy. As more and more people are using it, of course, there needs to be a little more standardization and compliance. There's obviously there's a problem there that the early users that like the Wild West, they don't like to be limited, but there's been a lot of discussions and user education to make sure that people understand why we're doing what we're doing. And then adding, as I said, adding the additional requirements around security and auditability and everything has developed. So that's the sort of the evolution of both our use and of the feature set that is required to support this. And I've mentioned usability a number of times. There is an inherent friction here that I want to get into. If you're talking in terms of safety audits and standards that are very rigorous, you need a really, really, really strict process. This is the exact flow that you need to go through. You need exactly these types of reviewers. You have to go through this thing. You cannot delete any comments. The global settings for the tool have to be set exactly this way. In contrast, if you want to encourage wider adoption, and by wider adoption, I mean, for this to be really successful in a company, you need to make the process so easy and so valuable that everyone will want to use it. And so you want this level of review and quality to be really built into the DNA of the group, so that it just, there's no question that if you have a piece of code or a document, that it's going to go through a review process, and everyone understands that. And it's just it's an expectation, and people want to do it because they understand the reasons for it. But that sort of wants you to have a loose process so that you can make it really easy for somebody to do this, not just for these final milestones, but also in their day-to-day jobs. And that's an inherent conflict, because you have support multiple workflows, which some of them want to be very flexible, and some of them want to be rigorous. And this has been one of the areas where we've had a lot of conversations with SmartBear around global settings that really need to be pushed more towards individual settings, so that groups that need the rigor can have it, but groups that don't need it can make it, their own choices. We've also had to work through a lot of usability things, because we have, there are multiple code review tools out there. Our revision control system has its own tool for doing code reviews as part of check-ins. it has certain strengths, it has certain weaknesses. And so trying to define a convergence point is a continuing challenge. There are, if your only tool in your toolbox is a hammer, every problem begins to look like a nail. But in reality, there are times when you do need multiple tools. And so trying to figure out where the right level of convergence is for that is an interesting challenge in terms of making the overall tool set as easy to use as possible. And as a result, we have different levels of user experiences, user expertise, and that has changed over time as we've changed our own internal use models. And so there's a fair amount of training that we've had to go through in order to make all of this work.
Yes, so, Scott, I was going to say, I love talking about usability as well, and just how usability extends so much further past functionality, and that just because something can complete a task doesn't mean that people are going to want to use that tool to complete that task, that they're going to find it a seamless, headache-free process. I think usability is evolving a lot based on user demands and expectations, and the way we've seen software, not provide some of the headaches that it used to in the past. So I love that, NVIDIA views usability as a lot more than just, yes, it does this thing, but yes, it does this thing in an easy way, and at the speed and the quality, that our users are looking for.
Yeah, it would be nice if we had a magic wand and these things were just basically you wave your magic wand and everything happens. But it's a journey to try and get to as our use models evolve, then the usability challenges change over time. So the challenges that we faced a year ago are different from the challenges we're facing today. And so it's an interesting thing for those of us that are the engineers that are sort of the power users of the tool. There's a lot of conversations about what is the right usability balance point, and so it's been very interesting to get all those perspectives and then try and balance all of them. I don't envy a company that has to do this for multiple customers. It's hard enough to make it work within a single company, to try to make it work across as many companies as you have to sell a product to. That's a whole different challenge. I'll let somebody else run that webinar. So, oh wow, so the continuous quality cycle. So as we're doing all of this work, we're writing documentation, we're continually testing things, all of that really has to happen fast enough that we can get these reviews done early. And that's one of the interesting challenges is, especially for the automotive market, they need documentation really early in the design cycle, often before we've really fully designed the chip or solidified things. And so there's a lot of revisions of documentation that happen over time. And so with that, then the review process has to be insanely efficient, because we don't want people spending all of their time documenting things. We want them to spend their time innovating and designing. And so the speed at which we can do these and still provide the level of quality is a closed loop system. The faster you can get your documentation, the faster you understand problems with it, you eliminate unknowns, and you both raise your quality and get your products out sooner. The more time you spend doing these document reviews, especially when they are required, the longer it takes you to get through your own internal design cycle. So there's a direct correlation between how fast can you do code reviews and how fast can you get a chip out. You really can. You can't really put a finger on it and say, these document reviews caused tape out to slip by 3 weeks or something like that. But there's definitely an accepted understanding that the faster that you can do these reviews and the more efficiently you can do them, the faster we can get to our internal milestones. And we've actually noticed benefits. It's hard to put into a slide, but subjectively, at least there has been a noticeable speed up that even management acknowledges. So I'll dive a little more into sort of our process changes, what key features that we use, and sort of the major use cases. So a lot of this is repeat, but I've already mentioned the different types of documents. One thing I have to point out is that sometimes reviews are hierarchical. You may have one version of a review that is done with a local team, and then that may need to be reviewed by higher levels of the organization as part of the overall review process. So that is an interesting challenge that you may have to do a review several times with different parties as you get to different levels of internal quality, and trying to do that while still executing at the speed of light is a continuous challenge for our use cases. So probably the most stringent is the document reviews related to the ISO standards. So here's the sort of the largest list of critical features. So most of these I've mentioned. I'll only touch on some of them. One is the use of user roles is very strongly mandated by the flow. We have to know exactly who is an official approver versus an observer. We take those very seriously as part of the review process. Integration with all of our revision control systems and revision support, very key for maintaining the auditability of the documents. Because of this multi-decade requirement, we also need to have the ability to create very detailed final reports, and then store those in a totally separate repository that's revision controlled, so that we can go back 20 years from now, even if the systems that run Collaborator have long since rotted and fallen into the landfill. We need to be able to pull those reports. So there's an export and report capability that's pretty required. And as we're going through so many different versions, part of the efficiency is learning where all of the differences in the documents are. So concentrating a lot on those diff views and making those as effective and efficient as possible is a key feature for the amount of reviews that we do internally. Code reviews look simple by comparison, but they are equally heavily used and equally important. The key features are really just the automation stack that's needed, because you want this as part of your normal Unix workflow model. So we heavily use the CLI clients. We have a lot of automation built on top of all of this. The integration with the code repository is a key aspect of this, and there are some approval workflows that are needed there. They are looser generally for internal code than they are for things that are related to safety products. But you still want to know, did I have the right set of people review this piece of code before it was released? Then there are things that are not quite documents, but they're critical features that we utilize for the concept of these safety reviews. There are certain security requirements. Who has access to these documents, and how do we maintain that? And is that easy to do? Do we have to go through IT all the time to make this stuff work, or is it something that can be self-managed? The entire sign-off flow, being able to use rework and send things through, and who did which approval. That's you'll see later in the presentation. There's still some work to be done there to make that as streamlined as we would like. And then, of course, the whole concept of doing defect tracking, tracking the different types of defects, what is their severity, all of that being a feature that you can customize within Collaborator made it easier for us to set up scenarios that are specific to the automotive field and to utilize those. So I mentioned this before, but I think it's worth putting an entire slide in to talk about. One of the keys of making this work for a product line has been getting involved with SmartBear directly on a lot of these things. We had it working pretty well but a couple of years ago, we really got to the point where we needed much better internal support and external partnership to make all of this flow. This is when we were starting to get to the point of saying we we're working with our external auditing firm, and we have some gaps that we need to resolve in order to get the first chip ISO certified. And so we went to SmartBear and said, here are the key pinch points. How can we work together to make this work in the time frame that we need? So on our end, we put a lot more investment from IT into dedicated staffing, higher performance servers, and everything to enable it from a hardware point of view. We had, like I mentioned, the regular meetings that we had with SmartBear on, these are our current issues, these are our use models, make sure everybody understands and is aligned on those. A lot of technical exchanges to discuss how those things should be implemented. Do we need a different feature, or are we using the tool in the wrong way? Are we abusing it in ways that was never intended? So there was both feature requests and also internal changes to our own workflows to make this work. I say incredibly rapid support for new features, and I mean, there were times when we would ask for a new feature, and within a week we had a version that was functional and working for it. There was tremendous feedback loops on some of these, and if there were any bugs related to that, the ability to resolve those was really fast. And I would say this is almost as fast as if we had an internal team doing things. I mean, the interlock was really good during this key time frame where we needed it the most.
Hey Scott, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the Collaborator team here at SmartBear, as NVIDIA is not the only company or customer that we have that views the relationship they have with that team as an actual partnership. But we've done a couple of these customer spotlight series episodes now, where when it focuses on Collaborator, that's just how that team, how our customers feel like they get to interact with that team, and that it really is a partnership, and creating the best version of Collaborator to help them, accomplish their goals and achieve what they need to do.
Yeah, this is a shining example of how interactions between a customer or vendor should be. And I will not say on the air exactly some of the ones where that does not work out well, but many of you know those companies. List. Yes, we have that list. It's probable. We'll compare notes over lunch sometime. So it's been a great partnership to pull all this together and get what we needed done. So we're now to the point where all of the factors around usability and scalability are there. Compliance is to the point where it meets all of the needs, and now we're trying to go beyond and get the next level of efficiency out of this. Clean up some of the things that we discovered on the first couple of generations of chips, and now we're really into optimizing the flows rather than enabling the flows. But that being said, there's always room for improvement, and so here's places where we're still working to get things going the way we really want them to for as streamlined an experience as possible. So performance continues to be a challenge. We've met most of the goals, but there are still times when a user will come and say, hey, it's taking really long to load this particular review. And somebody goes off and says, oh, well, it's unusual in this respect. Things are getting more complicated, more documents, more versions. The use model is evolving. And that's causing new challenges in performance. So we solve 5 problems where 1 new one pops up. So there's things there. In addition, I've mentioned the time to market shrinks over time. People want their products faster and faster. That sort of falls into that speed of light. What's the fastest we can do it without cutting any corners? And so, getting that review done faster, is important. You don't want people sitting there waiting for the little spinning dial on their screen to make progress. That's where we really want to address this. And then workflows. There's a number of things here that are challenging. We're continually refining the usage models and optimizations, but the biggest areas that we are fighting right now are around approval processes and auditability and optimization. So, for instance, if you, at some point we found that if you set the poke me option in the review, a reviewer could sign off, and once you've said poke me until I'm mentioned specifically, somebody could upload 10 more versions of a document, and you wouldn't be notified. So that is technically a user error. People shouldn't be using that, but occasionally somebody pokes the wrong thing, and then they miss out on an opportunity to do. And if they happen to be an official reviewer, that becomes a problem. It slows everything down because you have to say, hey, I've uploaded this version. It's been 2 days. Why haven't you responded? Oh, I pressed the wrong button. So there's some efficiencies there that we need to do. And those are really required because we have to make sure that we understand who approved what and when. And poke is sort of an antithesis of that concept. And then there's oddities around, when you accept something, there's no way to unaccept it. And so it's especially when something needs to be immutable and you click accept and you meant to click read, that can become a problem. And so there's some challenges there that are really, they're built into the tool in a way that makes this challenging to resolve. So we have workarounds for this to make it so that the audit log shows this was a mistake and things, but those are challenges to try and do. And then again, the more you try and ratchet down the capabilities for safety audits, the harder it is for somebody to just do ad hoc code reviews. So there's a continuing friction there as we're trying to figure out, like we've made a few requests on how to turn a global setting into something that can be done on a per review basis, or the concept of having review templates where this is a type of review that requires a different level of configuration. So there's some ongoing discussions there. So there's a lot of good stuff. We're now to the point where we're really tweaking rather than creating wholesale feature sets. But this is the sort of level that we're operating at between the two companies these days. So given all that, we're now to the point where I said we really think we've improved our time to market by using this tool as opposed to some of the other possibilities. We were able to outsource certain things that we didn't have to do ourselves, and at the same time get better reviews, better quality, meeting our milestones for this. The amount of time it takes to do a review has decreased, although it's kind of hard to pull that from the database. It's some pretty complicated database queries to figure out that, but just in general, we spot checked a few and said, hey, the same document a year ago took this long to do. Now we're getting them done, 2 or 3 days faster. And I think that the flow has a lot to do with that. With all the features and the processes, we now have a great story on meeting our ISO compliance. The external auditors that do the qualification, have to look at those work products, and they've had to ask very few questions about that side of things compared to some of the other customers that are working through the same sort of stuff. And we've clearly streamlined everything over at least probably the last 5 years for sure. Streamlined the process on making this better for both document and code reviews. So that's where we stand today, and with the additional changes that we're working on, and the additional product lines that we're going into, we expect this trend to continue. So that's it.
Great.
Our story for today.
Thanks so much for sharing that with us. It's great to get that much from you as far as sharing how Collaborator is used, your goals there. And I love hearing anytime about how our solutions are being used by our customers, but especially from those who are using it in some really innovative ways, which it goes without saying that NVIDIA is clearly doing. It is time for the Q&A portion of the event. It does say poll question here, which helps remind me to launch a quick poll, which I will do now. For our attendees here on the Zoom, you'll be able to participate in that. It's just one question, super easy. If you can take part in that for us, we would greatly appreciate it. And then I am going to get started looking at the questions here. There may still be time to answer new ones that are still on the way. So you can use that Q&A tab to submit those, and we will go ahead and get started. Putting you on the hot seat here, Scott, I'm going to try and choose some that I personally would also love to know the answer to.
Play stump the presenter. All right.
Right.
I'm used to this.
Someone has asked, do you have DevOps processes in place at NVIDIA? And if yes, is SmartBear Collaborator part of those?
DevOps?
DevOps.
Oh, DevOps. Oh, yeah, actually there is DevOps. And when I was pulling the statistics, I'd have to go back and look up, but there's a percentage of reviews that are specific to the DevOps organization. So yes, it's not compared to the number for the products and all the code reviews. It's a smaller percentage, but it doesn't fall into other either, really.
I'll go for an easy one here. Someone has asked, what version of Collaborator are you using?
Oh boy, I might have to look
that was
up
an easy
one. They just did an upgrade a couple of weeks ago, so I'm going to say we're darn close to the top of your tree right now. Okay. I think it was maybe 3 weeks ago we did the last upgrade.
Great. Do you use any Collaborator integration with revision control?
Yes. We've got some Perforce integration, some Git integration, GitLab, probably others. Those are the only 3 that I've personally been involved with. I would have to go look at the configs internally to see if there's others that are active.
I think I can tackle 2 of these at once here. We've got one person who has asked, can you share any metrics on how long it takes documents to get through a review cycle? And then someone else says, how do you get people to focus on reviews and not take over a week to complete?
Oh, yes. So the review time, it depends on the nature of the document. So a code review, I think I did like 6 of them yesterday. It might only take half an hour if everybody's online and active, and we're saying, hey, we really want to get this out. So that's from the time that somebody creates it to the time that we close it and everybody agrees that this is ready to go. Those are, usually, changes that are in the, dozen to 100 line kind of code things. A 400-page architectural spec can take a month or 2 to go through if there's a lot of debate on things, or somebody says, I am going to have to go off and ask, person XYZ more about that. And so the review time itself, just the amount of time, I reviewed 2,700 pages about a year ago when we were doing our initial things. That was 43 documents and 2,700 pages. Wow. Most of my time was actually spent eyeballing the documents. The amount of time that I actually spent in Collaborator, adding comments, was probably, for that was, hundreds of hours, certainly. But that's an unusually large number because I'm the CPU verification tech lead, so I have to read every single document and make sure that they all are consistent with each other. So that's sort of an extreme example. But that took a couple of months of probably, 2 or 3 hours a day to do that many documents and to track them all and get everything resolved. But the other half of that question was, how do we, what was it? How do we get, ask the question
keep people
again.
from, I marked it as done already, but it was how do you keep people from taking over a week to complete?
Oh,
it sounds like, but depending on the document size, that may be required. Yeah.
In some cases it is, in some cases it's not. But yeah, there's an expectation that I think is becoming more common, which is, when somebody asks you to do a document review, it's not a drop everything, but you're holding them up, and so I think that there is, as it's become easier to use, people are more willing to spend 5-10 minutes to go look at something. So there's the ad hoc ones that have sped up, and they don't take very long at all. These really big revisions, your 1.0 architecture doc, yeah, those they're going to take a while. There's no help for that.
Someone has asked, have you ever used Collaborator with DO 178 standard before ISO 26262 published?
That's possible, but I wasn't involved. So I would not be able to answer that question.
Okay. Do you have Collaborator integrated into any CI servers like Jenkins or other similar tools that you use?
Yes, I'd say I know there's a tie into Jenkins, and then the other revision control systems. There's probably a lot more. There's my view is mostly on the CPU usage. There are so many other teams using it that there are some. I see questions fly by occasionally on our Slack channel for Collaborator, and I'm like, wow, I didn't even know we were doing that with it. So yeah, but I'm not sure that I could answer that adequately.
Gotcha. Someone has asked, how do you, it says, wondering how big your, it says, I think SP is probably SmartBear, installation is, and it says number of users, number of servers in your cluster.
Let's see, number of users. I thought I pulled those statistics. Let's see, there's about 20,000 in the company, and I would guess that there are probably 10,000 Collaborator accounts, give or take. So pretty significant number. Let's see, what was the other statistic you were asking?
It was number of, it was servers, or was that? I'm trying to see here in the answered. I gotta start marking these as asked before we're done. Oh yeah, the number of servers in your cluster.
Oh, number of servers in the cluster. I don't remember. I had that conversation with our IT person, and I don't remember the number now. It's. I also start to confuse which sets of tools that I kind of do this sort of same thing with. Most of our tools are multiple redundancy failover sort of systems. I can't remember the configuration for this specific server, though. I don't have to get involved with that very often.
I'm going to ask another one around 26262, since that is a standard that a lot of our customers are using Collaborator around. Jeffrey says 26262 has two different styles of reviews, walkthrough / formal inspection. Do you use Collaborator differently to address both review types?
Oh, I'll say yes. I think it kind of falls into the amount of, both of them go through Collaborator. Within the limits of what the global settings are, the changes are more in how you're using the roles, and do you send it back to rework, and things like that. So yeah, there are some slight differences. I would have to sit down and think about how to draw a flow chart of the differences between the two. Somebody who is actually in the safety organization might be able to describe that off the top of their head, but we do end up doing both types.
Okay. And then we might have time for one more here. I'm going to try and knock out two in one, because we do have two people who've asked about archiving. One person says, would like to know more about the strategy put in place for server disk space to cover Collaborator usage. And is there any archiving strategy being followed for older reviews with usage of around 10 years? And then someone else has asked, just what is your review archival process?
Yeah. So, so we have a whole bunch of disks, and we do archive things off to the alternate storage. There's a policy in place for that. And then, of course, the exporting the reports to make sure that that's there. But we've got a pretty honking big volume where we've got, the vast majority of things that are available are still on the system and visible. When they do get archived, it's a pretty simple IT ticket to make them active again. Takes about 5 minutes to make the request, and usually within about 4 or 5 hours, I think the review is visible again. So yeah, we do have to go back and we do try and save the disk space, and there is an effort going on right now to clean that up a little bit better, to make a little more disk space and help with some performance around that space.
Great. That is about all the time that we have today. I want to make sure everyone can get to their next appointments. We appreciate everyone for joining. I do want to say thank you to our audience for joining us today and for submitting all of those questions. That was great. I always love when we have that much interaction with the audience that way. And I want to also thank you, Scott, for not only sharing this story with our audience, but with me as well. And before we go again, all of our attendees, you will receive a recorded copy of this presentation for your on-demand viewing pleasure and for sharing with your colleagues, which we encourage you to please do. And we will absolutely be presenting more of these in the future and hope to have you join us again for our next episode of the SmartBear Customer Spotlight Series. Thank you, Scott.
All right, thanks for listening.
All right, bye, everybody.